Unsurprisingly, we have another local issue question. In fact, we've got two, which again I've joined together. Both questioners are going to ask it, but I would ask you to make sure that you answer both. So first of all, Sheila Costello.
Good evening. As has already been mentioned, we're all living longer and longer, and more people in the communities now are suffering from dementia. In this area, there are only 2 weekly daycare facilities for dementia, and one of them is actually run by volunteers. If you were elected, how would you tackle this whole of mental health care?
Thank you, Sheila. And David, your question, please.
Good evening. My question is about the reorganisation of NHS hospitals and facilities in the local area. There will be a reduction in A&E facilities in particular, which will lead to protracted delays in getting treatment. Having been the subject of a cardiac arrest, that's me by the way, which led to a triple bypass, I have first-hand experience of being blue lighted. Can the candidates indicate if they have signed the KOSHH pledge for the 2019 general election?
Okay, thank you, David. Jonathan, if you'd like to start off, please.
Thank you. Our green position on health is clear. It needs to be properly funded and it needs to be local. Currently we have an NHS which has not the funding it needs, partly because it's not got the money and partly because privatisation of contracts under the NHS is drawing money away from providing the nurses and doctors we need. So what we would do is increase the amount of funding for NHS generally, increase funding for nurse training so that we have bursaries reinstated for nurses, and that means that we change the direction of spending on NHS. So rather than risking closing hospitals down, and Boris has pledged to build I think 5 new hospitals, which isn't very many, we should focus them on NHS on making sure all of our existing hospitals are good and getting better and providing local services. So yes, I've signed the KOSHH pledge. I support that we have acute services from all our local hospitals. In terms of dementia, I think dementia is about where NHS and healthcare comes together. We need to have an integrated approach, and that means not just NHS funded properly, but local councils that deal with much of the social care issues. That has been underfunded, it's led to pocketing of money to a smaller number of individuals, with many people losing out as a result. We need to reinstate those local centres. The Alzheimer's Centre near where I live in Redhill was closed and then was survived by the creation of a new local charity. That's not what we should be doing. It's the government should hold our social services, and they shouldn't be held together just because local people come together and form new charities. But dementia also is a long-term issue. One thing we would do as the Greens is make sure we deal with the overall health of our society. Air pollution is linked to dementia. So if you deal with traffic issues, if you make our society more healthy, you stop us having so much drugs coming in through our skin, through the way we live, then we're more likely to live lives which are longer, but with more healthy years in our life. So we need to make sure we deal with dementia as an issue of prevention as well as an issue of treatment and cure.
It really saddens me to hear about the dementia and how that these are having to be run by volunteers. I'm really sad because in our caring communities we should be doing a lot more to make sure that elderly people are looked after and anyone with disabilities have a provision for them. In the short term, UKIP will increase social care funding in England by 5 million to remove the threat of people losing their homes and the need for social care. We also believe with the NHS that we believe the NHS should continue to be free as a point of delivery. In terms of with the hospitals and the way that they are potentially losing their services and we are being taken away from the care that we need immediately in the local proximity, I think is a very dangerous thing to do. We need our hospitals, we need our accident and emergency. We don't want people in an emergency state having to travel across regions to get to a hospital because they haven't got the provision at their local hospital at St Helier's or Epsom. I know from personal experience that they're very good services that they run in these hospitals, and we do indeed need to take care of them, just like we do need to take care of our elderly. So whether it's dementia or whether it's any other provision for care for the community, it does need to be protected, and it does need to be developed, and it certainly needs looking at. And with everything that we have for our NHS, it's so precious that we mustn't lose sight of that, and we must fight hard to keep it. Thank you.
Dementia is obviously a terribly important subject, and I'm delighted that the Conservative Manifesto proposes to double research into it. The adult social care that is part of caring for people with dementia is obviously an important part of the package, and £1 billion is being pledged into that. And the reason there isn't a specific adult social care proposition in the Conservative Manifesto is we want this to work across the floor, so that we actually come to a solution agreed with the other political parties that can stand the test of time. But I want to turn now to the St Helier Hospital issue. We have secured £500 million of funding for a new acute care hospital in the Epsom and St Helier Trust. The business case is for that hospital to go to Sutton, adjacent to the Royal Marsden site. This happens to be the proposal. That is the business case and the medical case for this trust. 2007, we had the same proposal. And because the Labour MP for Mitcham and Morden had her constituency was adjacent to that site, ignored the priorities of people to actually get the best care in the best place, which is an acute care facility adjacent to a great international institution, she formed up to Patricia Hewitt to have it stopped. And finally, 12 years later, we are now in a place where a Conservative government has the money to review the right acute care solution, particularly for the people of Banstead, but also for everyone in the Epsom and St Helier Trust area, to have the finest modern facilities, again alongside a great international institution, whilst of course hospital care will continue to be provided at the Epsom and St Helier sites. We have a great solution within our grasp, and if I am elected on the 12th of December, I can assure you, sir, I will be campaigning with all my might that when the last stage of this process, the formal consultation comes out, that everyone in Banstead contributes to that consultation, so it is not dictated by the rotten politics that so wrecked the proposal 12 years ago.
Two very important questions. Let's start with dementia. Now, I think you're right. Voluntary organisations and charities have a role to play, and they do need to be supported by the state. Within the Lib Dem Manifesto, you'll see a very big focus on improving funding of mental health facilities and care. So it is a key pivotal part of our offer at this particular election to address what has been a bit of a Cinderella service, over the years. And physical health, yes, we've been funding, physical health, but mental health has been not funded on an equivalent level. And if you think of the impact it has on people's lives, then it should be. So that's what we're moving towards. On the hospital A&E situation, I think local communities have to have confidence in the facilities that are provided. So you do need acute services that you can access in a timely manner. And that seems to be one of the critical issues here. We all know the condition of the transport system in this area, and the roads, and the difficulty it is to get from A to B. I'm in Reigate, so it's East Surrey Hospital, but nevertheless, the difficulty of getting people, Crawley, for example, has to depend on East Surrey Hospital. So if you have an acute case in Crawley, they have to come up to East Surrey. So we have this over-centralisation again. Now, I know it's often driven by specialisation. You know, we have economies of scale, therefore you can specialise. But the local community must have confidence in the facilities that are available locally. And we'll fund and ensure that those acute services are there, the basic acute services are there available to all. So I will be signing the pledge, and thank you very much for providing that to me.
Thank you. Quick one on the dementia side of things. Yeah, it's a focus in our manifesto. We have a section specifically on dementia. It needs a huge amount of investment. And as I've mentioned before, we need to be tying up all of our care systems together, so social care, mental care, physical care, need to actually all be invested in and have a holistic solution to them. In terms of St Helier Hospital and Our Epsom Hospital, I've signed that pledge. My mum was a nurse at St Helier Hospital. My little brother was born in that maternity unit in St Helier Hospital. I have personal attachment to it. But even if I didn't, I do not think closing 2 acute centres and replacing them with one at some point in the future is actually the right thing to do. We already have the worst delays in A&E on record, and to be in a position where we're looking at closing units is not going to solve that problem. The issue is due to underfunding and austerity, and both of these hospitals need a huge amount of investment, and that is what Labour will be doing. It is another way of trying to downgrade our NHS, if you ask me. And if you talk about investment, I still don't understand why we sold land off at Epsom Hospital for £15 million, way below market value, which is with the condition that it was going to be used for retirement housing. That was public land. That should have been used for public housing if housing was the requirement for it, not sold off to a private company. So we do need to invest in our NHS. Its buildings, its staff, everything needs investment. We will put 4.3% of our budget into investing in our NHS. Repeal the Health and Social Care Act, which is something that came in under the Lib Dem and Conservative coalition, which basically means they don't have any legal responsibility for your care, which means they can do things like do this to our hospitals and our care system, because the Secretary of State doesn't have a legal responsibility. That needs to change. We will be responsible for your care.